on the field, in the locker room, that used to, like, amaze me. Just, like, I was, like, in awe. But I love, saying that my first boss was Johnny Unitas. And, but yeah, no, he was just Johnny Unitas was like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Peyton, maybe not so much this year, but Peyton kind of rolled into one. He was like kind of the quarterback of the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody knew who he was, and, all of that. So, and yes, they put a statue up to them, which I thought was great because the Ravens embraced the Colt players that were still around, and also even if they were not around, like as far as in Baltimore, they embraced the Colts players, brought them to the Ravens games to participate in pre-game and halftime activities, and they inducted the Baltimore Colts into the Ring of Honor, which I thought was like a really, really, really great move on their part. So,
what about the golden toe? Like, why is it a tradition for fans to rub that before a game?
Well, I think as far as the toe, it's just because the statue is tall, and that the toe, you literally do have to reach up a little just to touch the toe, so you're not... He was the man with the golden arm. That was his, the name of his restaurant, too. And still today, there's an award given to the top quarterback, the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. The top, I don't know if it's senior quarterback or whatever, just the top quarterback that year. And that award is still named after him. But I think the toe is just because that's what people can reach. But yeah, he was the man with the golden arm. If they could reach his arm,
it would be gold.
That's the one that would be gold.
Yeah.
But everybody just rubs it for good luck. And I think they're doing that with Ray's statue, too. I'm not positive of that, but I would almost imagine they would start doing the same thing with him, because he's a Hall of Famer, first ballot as soon as probably pretty soon, like in a couple years at the most.
So,
and the Orioles,
we'll talk about the Orioles.
I mean, the Orioles now the Orioles, I've had a relationship with the Orioles even longer than all that, because the football, because the Orioles have been around since the day I was born, and before that,
1954.
54, so it was 7 years. But I can say that I've seen the whole history of the Orioles except for those first 7 years. Wow, I didn't see it when I was 1 year older, but you know what I'm saying. I was around. But really, the Orioles, the city loves the Orioles. The city kind of lives and dies with the Orioles a little bit. When the Orioles do well, it's just amazing how the city just perks up, and excitement, and just and it does great for business, and just the whole town just kind of lights up, the O's. And I've been there, for all the eras in a way. I mean, I can even remember the first great era of the Orioles. I was a kid, but my grandfather would be watching them on TV, or my dad, and there wasn't... But the great thing was actually the radio broadcasts. Back then, we had really Hall of Fame type broadcasters that just... that's kind of like a soundtrack. One of the soundtracks of my growing up was hearing the Oriole games on. You could walk down the street, I would say in the city, but even in the suburbs too. You could walk down through your neighborhood and you would hear Chuck Thompson and Bill O'Donnell and other people, that you would hear their voice, their smooth voices, setting up the pitch, and it's a long fly ball, deep center fielder. Paul Blair goes back. He leaps. He's got it. He pulled it back in. So and we had, and so I got to, we were again, from the 1964, which when I was too young to know, but 64 through 80, 84, that's 20 years, and then they had another era in the mid-90s, and then they've had their recent little winning era, which, they've been in the postseason two out of the last three, what is it?
2012.
Two of the last 3 years? Or two?
Yeah, 2014.
Okay.
And then 2013, we missed it by just a little bit, and then this year...
We had a 500 record.
Yeah, 500 record.
So it was sustained success all the way through, and I felt like they were a model organization forever, and they've gotten back to that, I hope. It seems like they've gotten back to
Buck.
Buck, and Buck reached out to Earl Weaver, before he passed away, which I thought was really cool, that Buck's, really embraced the history of the team, and which kind of got disappeared at times a little bit when they were losing for 14 years. So the Orioles have always, even just as recently as last fall, a year ago, we were traveling up to Baltimore, to Canton, which is a stone's throw from Camden Yards, and we were down there just cheering them on. Everyone's down there for the same reason. It's not just Baltimore. It unites a city a lot of times like that, but yeah.
But the tradition of baseball in Baltimore has always been rich. It goes
back to the 1800s.
Yeah.
We had championship teams in the late 1800s. We had, these John McGraw, who ended up being a Hall of Fame manager with the Yankees. He was the manager of the Orioles before that, and a player. Mm-hmm. And then he went on to New York. Baltimore's favorite son. Remember who that is? Babe Ruth. Possibly considered the greatest baseball player ever. His dad had a bar in what is center field of Camden Yards right now, and Babe worked there. And Babe played for the minor league Orioles. Babe was a bit, I don't know. He was a kid that got in trouble a lot, and he had to go to a sort of a school for kids that were having trouble behaving themselves, and St. Mary's Industrial School, and I don't know if he had nuns or what over there, but they tried to whip him into shape a little bit, but nothing ever really worked. So Babe, but the famous story is, that Babe was, he was bought, I believe, and which was common, bought by the Red Sox from the Orioles. The Orioles were not, at that point, major league. Mm-hmm. They were just one step down at the time, and so the Red Sox, I think, bought or traded for Babe Ruth, and Babe Ruth was a really good pitcher, but then the Yankees got him, and then the rest is history. Then the Red Sox didn't win a World Series after they got rid of Babe Ruth for over 100 years, I think it was.
The curse.
So do you want to go on to another?
No, actually, let's talk about the O in the national anthem. Where does that come from?
Yeah, that was not around when I was younger. I don't know. When did that really...
Wild Bill?
I guess it did start around that time. There was what's called Oriole Magic that started. They even say it started on an actual specific night in Baltimore when Doug DeCinces, who was the unfortunate player that replaced Brooks Robinson, and I haven't mentioned Brooks Robinson at all. Oh my God,
that's crazy.
He's like Brooks Robinson. He's right along Johnny Unitas, but and I guess Cal, but whoops! I started looking at the game for a second. Oh, man, I love losing my thought again.
The O.
Oh, the O. Okay, so Oriole Magic. It's when the team started getting good again after a little bit of a lull, just a little bit of a lull. And it was kind of the second wave of the great Oriole teams. Like, there was the first wave with Brooks, Frank Robinson, Boog Powell, Paul Blair, Palmer, although Palmer was in every era, which is, he's another one that's, like, he stands way up high as far as sports and involvement in the community and stuff.
Yeah.
But, and then the next era was like Eddie Murray and Cal and Mike Flanagan, McGregor and Ken Singleton and Dempsey, Doug DeCinces. So I was going to say Doug DeCinces was the unfortunate guy that had to replace Brooks Robinson at third base. It was an institution. But Doug played well for us too, and he hit a dramatic, like, bottom of the ninth home run that they say to this day was the beginning of that era of Oriole Magic at that time, which I don't know if you really would know what I'm talking
Orioles
about.
Magic, feel it happen.
Right, you can YouTube that song.
Oh, I've heard
probably.
it.
It's cheesy, but
no, it is. But I love it.
It kind of captures that time a little.
Yeah.
But the O thing, I think it started around that time, and it just kind of got momentum, and some people don't like it.
Some people find it to be disrespectful.
Some people do find it to be disrespectful. I don't think anyone that does it is trying to be disrespectful in any way, but I think now it's become like a Baltimore tradition. No one's trying to be disrespectful.
Guess where the national anthem was written?
And there we go with the history.
The history.
Right a stone's throw from these places I'm just talking about. Camden Yards and Babe Ruth's father's bar. Stone's throw is at Fort McHenry, which is where offshore Francis Scott Key wrote the Star Spangled Banner. And then you've got the grave of Edgar Allan Poe. That's still to this day. Well, last I heard, a mystery person always leaves a rose at Edgar Allan Poe's grave.
Yeah, that's a bit of a tradition right
and
there.
No one ever seems to know who it is.
It could be multiple people. One of the best poets ever. Mm-hmm. Wrote some of the coolest stories I've ever read, that's for sure. I would still keep reading them. But anyways, we can talk about sports forever.
Right, I don't want to like monopolize sports.
Let's talk about the food in Baltimore. And the number one food there would be seafood.
Right.
So what can you say about that?
Well, it's a port city. You know, so it kind of has that tradition. They've always had ships coming in with all kinds of stuff, but including seafood. And then your inner harbor is right off the part of the Chesapeake Bay, which is one of the largest, what they call estuaries in the world, actually. A huge body of water. And obviously, they've had a seafood industry in Maryland, not just Baltimore. I think it's because, like, with Baltimore, it's because they have that port that comes right in, and they have the giant, these days, have the giant tanker trucks come in with all kinds of stuff from everywhere in the world, actually. But even back in the, the colonial times and all that, you had the sailing ships, the big sailing ships coming in there with stuff. So seafood is just, it was there. It's in the bay, and then you have the Atlantic Ocean, which is off the coast, and then you have a lot of rivers and lakes, and there's a lot of bodies of water. So it's like seafood and fish. I mean, you're not going to say like freshwater fish are really seafood because it's not the sea, but like the fishing industry, and then the seafood and the crustaceans, and obviously the crab and the oyster are the kings, especially the crab, but oyster very much too. I was never a huge